It's easy
When
to
do you do that?
I mean, my
That's-
body just finally said yesterday
I don't-
it's not going to be tolerated, so you need to stay home.
I don't want to see the day that led up to the day that you said that you overdid yourself.
I know.
How about the days my tail light got stolen when I went to Bethany? They stole my tail light
Off your car?
off my car, damaged my car. I think they messed with my wires because my running boards aren't working now, and drove from Garden to Topeka to Lindsborg to Kansas City, back to get my tail light fixed, and then back to Garden City. And
Wow.
so yeah, I think it's just
Down
a lot
around
of.
Kansas City in your car.
I know, right? Wow.
Man.
They just took a flathead screwdriver. 3 minutes and 25 seconds is how long it takes to remove a Ford tail light, if you want to know. I had to YouTube it, but apparently it's a thing. And like even body shops are stealing them.
Just one. But are they taking
1,080. 1,080
for one?
for one.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Okay.
It was a thing.
It's crazy.
It's okay.
All right, it is 1 p.m. Tuesday, July 19th. It's time for our regularly scheduled city commission meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor.
All right. I believe it is my turn for the Pledge of Allegiance and flag invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow with me. Dear God, thank you for giving us today, and thank you for all the things that you've given us. Please be with all of our families as they're getting ready to go back to school, and please be with our farmers and our ranchers as they're dealing with high temperatures. Please help us to make wise decisions today, and please be with our first responders as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Next up, we have approval of the minutes. Is there any changes that we see from there?
No, look
All right.
good.
Then they will stand as approved. And then next, we have a public comment. This is time for people to come up and talk about anything that is not on the agenda. So we have 30 minutes allotted, 5 minutes per speaker. If you do come up to the podium, please make sure you speak into the microphone. And clearly, that also goes to everybody, not just public comment. I've heard from Facebook that they have problems sometimes hearing what's going on at that podium. But if you do come up, state your name, and anybody who's not something on the agenda. I feel like I have comments from people that are going to be on the agenda. All right, we'll move on.
Mayor and Commissioners, item 7A, Chief Ursick and Chief Pruitt will present the 2022 fireworks report. Chiefs?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
This will be the 2022 fireworks report. The primary focus from June 27th to July 5th is getting an education material to the community. This starts with the permitting process and the inspections of the stands before they open. With the help of the communications department, the fire department and the police department had a pre-built campaign that covered fireworks safety tips and rules and regulation flyers that we were able to hand out. Fire department and police department were highly visible June 27th through July 5th during patrolling. Fire department personnel were able to contact around 1,000 people for educational purposes. Again, with the help of the communications department, the fire department and the police department had a pre-built social media campaign that allowed us to reach approximately 60,000 people, which was an increase of 20,000 from last year. With the increase in views, allowed us to generate 3,600 views and reactions and comments. On the left, I'll let Chief Pruitt talk about his graphs.
So you can see the data presented here. It's a 5-year range of data, and the date range is the 27th through the 5th. And what we have is our violations reported to the GCPD, and that includes, so usually if we have self-initiated calls with officers, and we also have what we call attempt to locate. So if we don't have a specific place, specific person that we're looking for, communications will air an attempt to locate where officers can go to the area, see if they can make contact with somebody and educate them on the proper procedures and the rules. And then we also have data that shows how many, we issued 2 citations this year. We issued 4 warnings. We were relying really heavily on the education piece, talking through with people in the community interaction, but we had some folks that were repeat customers for us, so they got to meet us quite a bit. So,
Moving over to the right side, the fires resulting from fireworks within the city limits, you kind of see a trend up. This year was pretty busy for us, 36 calls compared to 2018 with 1. And then thanks to Solid Waste for providing the information for the graph on the right corner, lower right corner, showing the property damage assessment. Just a slight increase this year due to dumpsters. There's a major property loss this year. And then county outside city limit calls, we had 14 calls. We did have 1 in Holcomb that we were able to, we suspected fireworks, but it was undetermined after investigation if we could link that to that. And talking with police department, Finney County EMS, and the records that the fire department has, only 1 reported injury for 2022, which is.
So the data that we're reporting here is, it kind of shows by date how many violations we had. High being the 2 with the 9 violations reported, and then on the first, I don't know what happened, nobody wanted to call us or see us, so nobody reported any kind of violations on the first.
Again, on the fire side, it kind of shows the 10-year, or the 10-day period of how the calls came in. To be expected, 4th of July was busy for us with an increase, or total calls of 29 that day and a overall call volume of 63 within that 10-day period.
So this map, we wanted to put it up there really because we didn't have any place that we could focus our efforts. It was all over town for the violations reported. There's no really data or anything that we could focus on, or a neighborhood that was really causing the problems. The violations that were reported were just all over town.
This is a range from June 27th to July 5th, kind of a timeline for fireworks violations to be expected. The later it got and the darker it got, the more increased calls that we had. So, love the background music too. So. Kind of moving forward into next season of fireworks, as taking in some considerations. We agree that the continued patrolling with the police department is best practice between both departments to get the education material out there and to make the contacts to inform everybody. Staffing level, the fire department increased minimum staffing from 8 to 12 that day. And then with the information from last year, we were able to add an additional 12 firefighters on through those peak hours of firework-related calls. I'd like to see more promoting working with the communications department and through videos or other forms of information to get to consumers of the fireworks. So, and then adding additional languages to fireworks safety rules and regulations hand out so that everybody's able to understand everything.
With the police department, with the staffing, I always like to point out that on the 4th, we don't really change, we don't add extra officers during the 27th, but we do add extra officers on the 4th. With the parade and the fireworks show, we have about 20 to 25 officers that we bring in for the parade to make sure that that's a safe environment. That's about a 3-hour window. And then some of those officers will come back for the fireworks show at night. We have about the same footprint, maybe a little bit less, 15 to 20 officers that handle the fireworks show and getting people into the 3-eye lot so they can watch the fireworks show, and then getting them safely out of that area and trying to keep traffic flowing there. What that doesn't take into account is any of the volunteers that we have in the Explorer program and the Citizens Assist team. So we have a whole bunch of people that come and help us, but we bring in a lot of people for that day for the parade, and then later that night for the fireworks show and the X patrol that goes on. And then finally, one of the things in the considerations, and knowing that it's a pretty politically charged hot button, and there's strong viewpoints on both sides. The discharge date versus the dates of sale. I think that both Chief Ursick and I would agree that if you guys choose to revisit that, then talking about it now, where there's enough time to discuss it, and the county can have a little bit of reaction time as well and get that information out there, and why this information is fresh, would be a recommendation that we would both support. And with that, if you guys have any questions for us, we'd love to answer them.
I was kind of just asked through, I was out of town that weekend, but coming back, I mean, I don't know, I didn't hear anything major, but the only question was, is there restrictions on where to pop fireworks or where to set them off? Because I know there was questions on issues with the park or near the zoo or near the ball fields there. What's off grounds?
So I know that USD 457 restricts access, and then I know the zoo, obviously they don't want fireworks in the zoo or around the animals. But other than that, during the fireworks show and the 3-eye, we restrict fireworks from being popped down there. We extra patrol that, make sure that doesn't happen. Otherwise, it's kind of an individual property owner and business owner type thing, so.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Good report.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Good job.
Items 7B through F are staff reports. Does the commission have any questions on those?
Just great to see that the airport hit another record on enplanements. I know Sunday I heard that they were like 9 short of hitting a record on operations for the tower, so good use for our airport.
Mhm.
I'd like to point out too, social media has done a great job in putting all the information out there as far as just, pictures and things on where things are and how they're operating and things like that. The information on there is awesome, so social media is outstanding work.
Thank you. Item 8 is meetings of note. Any of those requiring RSVPs, please get with Celine. Item 9A is the appropriation ordinance. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2559-2022A.
I move that we approve appropriation ordinance number 2559-2022A.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider a modification to the Code of Ordinances as it relates to foul regulations and direct staff as appropriate. Danielle?
And I'll say before Danielle gets started, I think the way we'll do this is have Danielle present the item and the background and everything, and then we'll have anybody from the public that wants to comment on it. And then after that comment's done, then we'll discuss as a commission. So just let people know.
Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. As Matt indicated, I'm here before you to present a consideration for you all as it relates to our foul regulations and to direct staff as appropriate. So at our last City Commission meeting, Ms. Douglas and Ms. Porter came before the City Commission requesting an opportunity to review the existing foul regulations as they're written. You all indicated a desire to do that, so that is the presentation before you here this afternoon. There are several directions something like this could go. So in order to kind of initiate the conversation, we laid out 3 general options for you all to consider and ultimately direct staff as appropriate. So the option 1, the first option, is really the status quo option. That is to keep the existing regulations that we have as they are written. As we kind of alluded to a little bit in public comment, this would require staff to make one of 2 assumptions as it relates to calls we receive related to PFOL. The first would be that there is ownership of the PFOL by a particular person in the community. If this assumption is used, as it is currently written in our regulations, PFOL are prohibited. And so if there was deemed to be ownership of any PFOL, a citation would be issued for any person who is deemed to be in conflict with this provision, and it would go through kind of that municipal court process. This has been the assumption that has been used to date, and in the packet material, we kind of included a summary of activity related to this, and so those instances where that has happened has been noted in that summary. The other assumption that the city staff could make is that the peafowl are not owned or kept by any person and that animal is at large. If that assumption is used, we would reference a different portion of our city code related to taking up of animals and fowl regulations, and that provision of our city code would be followed. And this does allow fowl to be removed as provided by law. So that's the status quo option. Option 2 is a consideration to modify our existing code, and this is what's being recommended by staff. We believe this modification helps provide some of the clarity that was brought forward where there may be some existing confusion. And it would modify code sections 10-31 through 10-33. And we've kind of showed a marked up version of that, what that would look like. There's a lot of cleanup, so I'm not going to go through each and every one of those changes. I think the notable ones really are the adding of maintaining fowl to the existing language. Currently, we have in there ownership and keeping a fowl, so we would add that maintaining language. So that would be a substantial change to that portion of the existing city code. It would also add an additional provision and section to our code that specifically addresses taking up unpermitted animals and fowl. So it really makes that distinction between permitted fowl, which are ducks and female chickens, and unpermitted fowl, and what the process would be for both of those. If option 2 were the direction the city commission would like to go down, it would still prohibit peafowl within the city, and it would prohibit any person to own, keep, or maintain fowl other than permitted fowl. And those not permitted fowl could be removed by our animal control officers as outlined in that language. Option 3 before you is related to, again, modification to existing city code as recommended by Ms. Douglas. So at our last city commission meeting, she provided you all with kind of her recommendation of what this language could look like, focusing more on kind of caretaker language of fowl in the community. This would be a pretty substantial shift in the way that we have approached this as a community before. And there are some provisions within that staff would recommend changing, modifying some definitions. We would recommend adding. So there are some items within that kind of draft language that if you all wanted to go down that path, we as staff would bring back a recommendation to modify some of that just to provide a little bit more clarity on some of those items. Regardless of option 2 or 3 or some combination thereof, it would require city staff to actually draft an ordinance and bring that back to you all for consideration. Really, the item before you is a discussion item to show you staff's recommendation is option 2, what that would look like in code, but ultimately we'd have to bring back a recommendation related to that. And if you wanted to go down the route of option 3, again, city staff would have to draft that in our ordinance form, bring that back to you all for consideration. So as I mentioned, staff is recommending alternative 2 as it relates to this item. There is no fiscal impact really to note related to this. In your packet, we did include the existing language as it's written, our proposed changes, both a kind of marked up version and a clean version, what Ms. Douglas has provided, and then kind of a summary of events that staff has responded to in the last several months, along with you all received kind of that letter of support and some public comment related to this item. So we've certainly heard from some of the community members related to this, so we wanted to make sure you had that information as well. So with that, I think public comment is next unless there are any initial questions for me.
Anything initially for Danielle? All right.
No.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Is there any public comments on this issue?
I brought some notes because I'm not a public speaker, so sorry. My name is Marilyn Porter, and I did come at the July 5th meeting and address the commission. And I just wanted to say good afternoon to the commissioners and staff. Thank you for letting me take the time to come and speak today on behalf of many of the residents of Amir Circle and of the Tally Trail walkers who have, over the past 3 years, enjoyed looking and watching the feral peafowl that have chosen to nest in our area. I want to also take just a second to say thank you to all of the Amir Circle, many of the Amir Circle residents who have come out today to show their support, and some of the Tally Trail walkers and utilizers that have also come to show their support. They've taken time out of their busy day, and I want to say thank you for that and for their appreciation and support of what is a spontaneous, natural event, but that we've all enhanced our lives in enjoying. So with that being said, what I would like to ask is that on all of our behalfs, we're asking that option 3 be considered, and that the coexistence of the 2 feral peafowl in our neighborhood be allowed to stay, be maintained, and of course documented, and work with animal control to make sure that all of the regulations as stated in Lucille's Douglas ordinance proposal are maintained. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Take any other public comment that? All right. I guess we'll go and discuss this. So,
Is there a step on taking to get a permitted animal? I don't know what that is. Can you help?
So in the city of Garden City, there are 2 types of animals that you can register. That echo really bad?
My ear popped.
no, it's so,
Sorry.
they're just making it so Facebook can hear you.
You can register a cat, you can register a dog, and then there's some other provisions for like our trap, neuter, and release for cats that are wild. We don't have a program for peacocks or fowl of that nature, or something else. If you had a deer or a porcupine or some other sort of animal that's supposed to be out there, we don't have a program for that, no.
Can I just address, the one thing I did forget
You have to,
mention- I'm
please
so
come to the
sorry.
mic,
Yep.
please.
The one thing that I did forget to mention, and not that I want to obviously diminish or cause ill towards another animal, but there are areas of town that have been annexed that had fowl, and they have been allowed to keep those fowl. And some of those are in direct contact with city, areas right now. So those are domesticated fowl. What we're asking is that the feral fowl who've wandered in be allowed to stay unmolested. But I did want you to know, in case you don't know, there are areas of town, specifically across from the new Walmart on Taylor, where there are many fowl. You can actually, hear them when they call and things like that. So I also have pictures throughout town where there are other peafowl who have been spotted as feral animals. So they are going to come into town as a consequence of farmers in the area and things like that in the county who are permitted to have those animals, and they either escape, and then of course because they inhabit the area so nicely, they're able to climatize to our winters and everything. They stay in the area, they breed in the county, and then we get those feral animals coming into town this way too.
Thank you. I think that one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we're considering stuff like this is it's not specifically one location that we're approving this for. It would be a citywide approval to talk about those sorts of changes. Any other comments? Ooh.
So if option 2 is chosen, does that mean, where's Danielle? That means then that the peafowl that are there would, what does that mean for what the current situation is?
So as our current code is written, peafowl are currently prohibited within the city. So there have been several citations issued at this point that are kind of working themselves through the municipal court process. So I don't know that we want to give I don't know that we have much of an update to give there, but that's kind of working itself through kind of that process. So if option 2 were to be the path the commission wanted to go down, it would still be a prohibited fowl to have within the community. So that's where we would go through the path of ultimately removing those peafowl from the residents when we receive calls related to requests for kind of nuisance control and that sort of thing.
Where did those,
Go ahead.
where do those get taken? I mean, what's the process? Where do they catch and release outside, or where do they go?
So, great question. Ms. Porter has been working with city staff and animal control. There were originally 5 peafowl, 3 pea chicks that she did help and work with the city to trap, and have been 2 of them have been relocated out to the county to a farm there. So we would obviously want to continue to have those conversations to make sure that that trapping is done in a humane and safe manner for the animal, and frankly move them likely out to a farm or some other place that would like to have those.
So option 2 is really just cleaning up the language from our previous meeting where there's no gray, it kind of cleans up the gray areas for law enforcement then,
Correct.
is what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
I'll make a motion that we direct staff and prepare an ordinance for consideration that modifies section 1031, 1032, 1033, and adds section 1034 as proposed by staff, which is option number 2 that was presented.
okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Before we take a vote, the other thing I say, I've had contact on both for and against on this from both sides. I mean, I think this is actually one of the most talked about issues that I've had with both on pros and cons, possibly since COVID. So I know this is something that people inside Garden City are looking at and have strong opinions on, I think, different sides. So I would like to just mention that I have had contact with a bunch of people.
Same here. I think my apprehension probably comes from the fact that there are both sides represented. But I'm not sure what the solution is. I'm not sure where the middle ground is, I guess, and trying to, because I'd hate to see, then this be taken, and then, the next thing that comes into Garden City, and then the next, and then before you know it, we're overrun with feral birds and other fowl that come into the city. And so it's just trying to figure out where that is, and I don't know the answer to that. So, because I do know that area, that the residents enjoy that, having them there, but I also understand the other side of it too, thinking about it from the big picture and what does this mean as a community, and what does this mean further down the road. And so I'm just trying to balance that.
Yeah. All right. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that passes. Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, item 12A. The governing body is asked to consider preparing design plans for 2 pedestrian bridges, a pedestrian bridge over DD1 to connect to the existing neighborhood sidewalk and Tally Trail, and a bridge across DD2 near Mary Street that is based on an anticipated future trail network. Should the governing body wish to move forward, they are asked to approve Wilson Engineering Task Order number GC 22-008 in the amount of $58,611.14. Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. As you know, the City of Garden City has long invested in bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Expansion of the community continues to call for the need to develop additional bike pedestrian infrastructure in partnership with developers. Furthermore, it calls for making additional public improvements that connect existing and new infrastructure in a systematic fashion. One bike pedestrian bridge to cross DD2, the DD stands for drainage ditch for those that are not familiar with DD, is called for in an approved development agreement with the Chapel Heights addition. The second bridge to cross DD1 is identified as an opportunity to connect the Tally Trail to a potential system expansion south of Spruce Street and completing the loop to the Tangeman Complex, and eventually will tie to a bike pedestrian crossing of US Highway 83 5400, otherwise the bypass. If the City Commission approves the move forward with the design of the bridge described, Wilson Engineering will conduct work scoped to include structural design for a standard abutment layout, assuming similar structure sizing and loading requirements of both sites. Structural design and detailing will be provided in the design plans and a bid package for bridge suppliers to utilize during the bidding process of prefabricated bridge structures. Minor site improvement and infrastructure design are anticipated at each end of the bridge over DD1 to connect to the existing neighborhood sidewalk and Tally Trail. The location across DD2 near Mary Street will be based upon an anticipated future trail network in this area and designed to integrate into a future trail configuration, but this scope does not include trail design to extend the trail. It's just for the bridge that they're going to do this part. The actual sidewalk is being constructed now on the, in the Chapel Heights subdivision area that we agreed to in the development agreement to do that part. The existing drainage channels and utilities and right-of-way are the main design obstacles of this project, and the estimated construction fabrication cost of both bike pedestrian bridges is in the $350,000 range. Once the design portion has been completed, then tighter estimates and bids can be obtained for more accurate costs of what these bridges actually would be. The final design and construction estimates for both projects would be used in future grant applications, city capital improvement planning and budgeting. The decision to move forward with the bidding and construction of each bridge would be at a future governing body consideration at that time. So the alternatives would be alternative one is approve Wilson Engineering's task order GC 22-008 for $58,611.14 to prepare design plans for the two pedestrian bridges, or alternative two is not to approve the task order. Staff recommendation is number one, and the funding from this would come from, if you approved it, would be the engineering fees project GL code that currently has a balance of roughly $205,000. There's a map attached that shows the actual location considerations of these bridges, and I'm certainly able to try to answer any questions that you may have.
So it's going to be up to Wilson or the city to determine whether these are metal steel structure bridges or concrete cast?
When that's bid out, there'll be some sort of prefabricated
Okay.
bridge, could be any combination thereof, I think, Commissioner.
Okay. I think it's a good plan.
I'll make a motion that we approve alternative one for Wilson Engineering Task Order GC 22-008 for $58,611.14 for the design plans for the two pedestrian bridges.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Item 12B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the presented agreement with Hunden Strategic Partners to complete an indoor ice facility market feasibility study, preliminary concept design, and project cost estimate. Aaron?
Afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. On the May 17th meeting, we approved the RFP to select Hunden Strategic Partners to complete the, for shorthand, ICE feasibility study. During that time, discussion arose between staff. It's generally accepted that ICE facilities don't operate very successfully when it's just a single ICE facility. So in the commission goals, a civic center was listed on there and a recreation facility. So in order to try to save some dollars using the same data but applying that to the various facilities, we asked them to revise their scope of work. At that meeting, we also said we'd bring that contract back. It's here before you today. The reason we're under new business is we've got that additional scope of work to consider. So in the interest of partnering, Mayor Dick was on the committee and reached out to Juan Pishney with the County Commission, giving them the option to partner with us on this. Ultimately, they declined. So what we have before you today is our options in order of kind of our preference as far as what staff's recommending. So the first recommendation would be approving the agreement with the additional scope of work for the ICE facility and the recreation center for a total cost of $73,400 and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement. Number two would be, which is basically was approved at the May 17th meeting, was approve the agreement with Hunden Strategic Partners for completing the study for the ICE facility at a cost of $51,400 and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement. The third is approve the agreement with Hunden Strategic Partners for completing a study for the ICE facility, the recreation center, and event/convention center for a total cost of $100,200. Now, if that option is selected, that would be fully funded by the city. So just being aware of that, and of course, you can deny all options and direct us to do something different. As you may remember, this was an unbudgeted item, so that cost will be incurred. $51,400 was authorized at that May 17th meeting. If alternative one is selected, we would add an additional cost of $22,000 to that. It would come out of the same fund. If alternative three was chosen, an additional $48,600 would be expensed out of the same fund. I would happily answer any questions.
I guess in your long-range strategic plan that you're looking at and working on, is a rec center part of that plan?
So in the statistically valid survey, components of a recreation center that are kind of outlined in the contract there that talks about, obviously fitness, indoor track, potentially indoor aquatic facility, which would be leisure pool, competition pool. It could be childcare, preschool. That kind of list is what's going to be looked at. Those are identified as needed items in that. Since the master plan hasn't been completed, we don't have the final write-up on that, but it would be believed since that was generated out of that survey, that would be one of the priorities.
These three facilities were chosen, well, the ICE facility was chosen because it showed up on consecutive years' worth of commission goals to conduct a feasibility study to look into this type of thing. The recreation center and the, civic/event/convention, whatever qualifier name you want to put in front of center, showed up again this year, independent of the work that Finney County was doing. That showed up on that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a majority of the commission was supportive of it, but you all have been through that process and know what it qualifies to get a project or a task on that. Strategic goals and objectives is really to get it in front of you so that you can make that formal decision. Is there majority support to move forward with study X or project X, or is there not? So that was, I think, I wasn't part of the subcommittee. I think that was a driving, as much of a driving element into availing the chance to use the same baseline data that would be used in all three. To kind of take advantage of contracting with one group, and then the plus-ups would be related to those industry-specific things, or the industry-specific analysis that would have to go into, in this case, the rec center or event, convention, and exhibition.
Right, and that's kind of what I was gonna get at what Matt said is the initial impetus of this was to look at one specific facility. But upon learning more about this company and seeing the work that they've done and seeing the skill set that they have, that's just not limited to, I mean, the ice portion is just one part of this thing that they've done. So they were very adept at doing things such as rec centers and event spaces and stuff like that. And like Aaron alluded to, they maybe sometimes co-locating them. They don't have to go together, but so that's kind of the reason that this kind of got on there, because it has been, I mean, I've been doing CIP for, I wouldn't say a decade now, I'm not that old yet, but for 7 or 8 years, and an event space or civic, I mean, like I said, event space, civic center, convention space has always been one of those city priorities. So this did look like a good way to maybe hit one of those things, and it is a commission goal again this year to get that included in there for probably a cost that's probably about a third of what it would to do an independent study, because they are, like we said, we're already collecting all that market data, all the pieces that go together, whether you're doing ICE or you're doing a rec center or you're doing a meeting space study, that base data is all going to be the same. So it's pretty affordable to add those pieces on when we have something like this already going.
And I don't disagree the economics of it. I think, you know, it is nice to save money, but I also know that there's a committee that's been charged with doing a needs assessment for the civics, or for us, an event space. And so I think, you know, in the spirit of collaboration, this is probably not collaborative. I mean, to just add that piece in there when there's already a group working on it.
I think there's a group that was convened. I wouldn't say it was charged. It's not like all of our groups got together and said, hey, let's get together and do that. There was a convening from Commissioner Pishney that did that. And the takeaway that I got from that was to go forth and put into design an RFP, an RFQ, to do the very first step of what we done here. And at that time, this whole part wasn't even, I mean, it was in motion, but it's not, we didn't do this because we wanted to try to get on the civic center side. All this is doing is saying we found a company that is very adept at what they're doing, and they have the ability to do this at a reduced price. If we do go through all those steps, we're still going to end up being at the place where we're going to need to do a study anyway. So to me, the question is, do we go forth with a couple of steps being done and just say, here's a affordable solution with a good company that does hit all the needs that we've been talking about as a city. And we're not talking about a specific project. It's not saying that we're trying to build X or Y or Z. It's just saying, what are the scopes of being able to do a project like this? What is the demand overall? What can we support? What can't we support? With the Sports of the World coming online, that takes out some of that need. What is that going to look like? So what it does is allows that group to get past that first step and say, okay, we do know what the parameters are. Now, how do we roll that into redoing the expo center and the fairgrounds? And do we need another facility besides what's already being planned in the community?
So how would that data, I mean, reconcile with what that committee is doing?
The committee met, do we have in the letter from Commissioner Pishney? March 31st, I believe, was that? Yeah, so the last meeting that we had was March 31st, and that's when they were, the conclusion of that was for those, they appointed Commissioner Pishney, Robert Reese, County Administrator Robert Reese, and then Micah from the Chamber and Roxanne from CVB to go and design an RFP, design the request for a proposal to do a needs study. As of July, whatever today, I have it on here, July 16th,
19th.
19th. We haven't even got to that the RFP step, not even trying to get that out to do this. So while there probably has been work going on in the background, an RFP generally is a pretty quick turnaround, 1 week, 2 week kind of thing to say, hey, does this kind of meet what we're looking at? So I feel like there has been work there, but I do feel like this does fulfill some of the consensus that we had of that group without, I mean, in the end, the point isn't to build an RFP. The point is to be able to do that study. And I think this gets us to that end of what I felt like was the consensus of what the group is trying to do. And then what are the next steps? We actually do want to do these things. What's those parameters? What can we do?
For those online, Lon Pishney, Chairman of the County Commission. First of all, this has not been brought to the County Commission as anything formal. I have divulged to the County Commission that I convened this group of what I saw as the appropriate stakeholders to have this discussion, and we did one in early March and one at the end of March, as we stated. But I have, like I said, I've confirmed with our commissioners that we've had this discussion. The only thing, and kind of tied to your assessment of the exhibition building, to see whether or not it would withstand addition of air conditioning and so forth and so on, or is the building too far gone and we need to be thinking something else? And then tied to what I...
All that information, it's a good thing, but just having I guess just having an ice rink doesn't really set good with me for a study. That's me.
Yeah, I think combining the ice facility and the recreation center makes sense.
Yeah.
Because agreed, I know how difficult it is to have just a single facility like that to maintain it. But if you have it in conjunction with a recreation center, it possibly could, make a lot more sense. And, having that multi-purpose venue would certainly be of benefit.
Right. And I feel like we're doing speculation on things that we're expecting to find out. Does it make sense to do ice? Or does it make sense to do a rec center? Or does it make sense to have additional space?
Maintaining that. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of acceptance.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, we do not have the need for 12D, the executive session as listed. So I think with that, we're ready for item E, which is the consent agenda, and if approved, would be items 1 through 4.
I move that we approve consent agenda items E 1 through 4.
Second.
And that's all I've got.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yeah, so with the August 2nd voting, it is National Night Out that night too, so support, get out there and meet the community, get it with your neighbors and stay cool. Yeah, it's gonna be hot, so that's another thing, just kind of be with our first responders and firemen, policemen and out there. They're all out in this heat and they're wearing their full gear, so if you see them, you got a bottle of water, drop it off to them. They'd really appreciate it, so. But on that note too, social media has been